Hello everyone, my name is Matt, and in today's video we'll be having a look at Blender's fluid simulation, Mantaflow. So we're just going to start off with the scene by hitting X to delete this, click on the camera, hit X to delete. We're going to use the default cube as this will be our fluid domain. We're going to hit S to scale it, and then we're going to hit Command or Control A to apply the scale to the cube. It's a good practice to have. We're going to hit Z to go to wireframe, and then we're going to hit Shift A again, and then we're going to bring in a UV sphere. Again, we're going to hit S to scale. We're going to hit GZ to move up, and then we are going to hit Command or Option or Control A again to apply the scale. We're actually going to make it a little bit bigger, and then hit apply the scale again. So we're going to move over to the physics tab, and we're going to click on the UV sphere. We're going to hit fluid. We're going to go to and type. We're going to go to flow. We're going to change the type from flow to liquid, and then the behavior from geometry to inflow. We're going to go back on the cube again, and we're going to hit fluid. Type, we're going to change it to domain, and we're going to change it from gas to liquid. And then we're going to scroll all the way to the bottom, and we're going to change this type from modular to replete. And this is just so that we could have a little preview to see how our fluid will be actually flowing inside the scene. So I'm going to pause this video because I only have 2 cores on this machine, so it probably might take a little bit time for it to render out these 250 frames, but I'm going to pause the video and get back when it's finished. Okay, so we're back. Actually going to pause the simulation, and we're going to go back. One of the things that you could do is change the end time, because I'm only running it for 50 frames. Let's drag this across. There you go. Let's gonna make this a little bit bigger so we can see how far our frames are, and then you could actually play from frame 1 to frame 50, and this is how it's going to look when it's finished, right? So one thing to bear in mind, the bigger that you make your domain, the longer it's going to take for your fluid simulations, and also the bigger you make your inflow object, the more water is going to be inside of the scene, and the more time it's going to take as well to calculate. So if you go back to the fluid simulation, we could see there that we have a resolution fluid divisions of 64. You could change this depending on your system. I'm running 64 because this is the stock value that we have here, but we want to make sure that because I wanted to make sure that my CPU could handle just this basic simulation. So that being said, let's see if you wanted to pour this water inside of a cup. How would we do that? Well, first you're going to hit Shift A again to bring in a UV cylinder. We're going to hit S to scale it down a little bit. Control A to apply the scale. Tab into edit mode, and we're going to go to face select. We're going to delete the first face at the top. We're going to delete that face. Then we're going to tab back out into edit mode. We're going to back to fluids, and we're going to go to, instead of domain or flow, we're going to use effector. And we're just going to leave it at that for the time being. And here we have our cup. So let's go back. I'm going to actually make my inflow object a little bit smaller. And I'm just moving a little bit faster right now, but we're going to go back to our domain, and to update the cache on this, we're just going to change one setting in here, and that should reset the setting because it doesn't normally resets by itself. So here we have our scene set up, and we're going to hit play to see how this is going to calculate. And this one shouldn't take that long, but we're going to see what's happening here. So as you can see, the liquid actually went straight through the cylinder. Instead of sticking inside the cylinder, which would be acting as a cup, it is not sticking in the cylinder. So one of the things that you can do is click on the cylinder, and then we're going to go to the modifiers tab, and we're going to go to add a solidify. I'm going to put this at the top, and then we're going to add some outer thickness to it. Make it about that size. And then we're going to go back. We're going to go back to the fluid simulation, and we're going to go back here. I'm going to change the setting just to make sure that the cache in the fluid sim is reset, and we're going to play and see what happens this time around. So there you could see already to begin to see that the fluid is actually building up inside of the cup as you would want it. I'm just gonna stop the simulation right here, and then we're gonna play back from the first 15 frames. Change that to 15 because that's as much as cached already. Go back, we're gonna hit play, and we have the water being placed inside of our cup. Now obviously in the simulation you're not necessarily going to want to have a cup this big, and you could go back to your modifiers tab and to apply even thickness, and you're not going to use a cup. A cup is not realistically this thick. So what you can do is go back. If you want to render this for the actual fluid simulation, you can go back, hit fluid domain, and go back to physics. If you're going to render this out, you're going to have to click on mesh on the domain. It's going to change to this and change it from replay back to modular or final, depending on which one you're going for. Final actually just gives you a different option, and that's going to be able to bake all. So if you have your mesh installed, if you have particles, spray, foam, all checked, is going to bake all of those for you without you having to go and set let's say I wanted spray, then rather than running the simulation and then having to bake my mesh, then having to come and bake my particles, I could bake all of them as long as I'm happy with the settings on final. I'm just going to go back on modular, and as you can see, bake particles now becomes a thing because it's going to bake the particles, but I don't want particles in this sense. So what you could do, again, to take off mesh, we could, let's say you wanted your cup to then, you could do the baking of the actual cup, the actual fluid. After you bake the simulation, you could then come back to the cup and then change back your thickness on the cylinder to be something about like that. Realistically like that. And then if you click off and you run the simulation, well, actually it reset the simulation that I had before because I played with the settings inside of the domain. So let me go back. We're going to go to the modifiers tab. We're going to change the thickness of the cylinder back down to something more reasonable for glass or cup. I think that would be reasonable for now. And because it's already cached and we haven't changed the dynamics inside the domain, if we hit this, then the water is still going to stay inside. And I could actually show you another simulation with that. But again, remember, depending on how big you have your scene, your domain, you would scale it to fit the actual size and parameters of this. So I'm going to go to File, Open Simulation. No, we don't want to save. And here we have a scene I already had set up. So here we could see we have a thickness. We want to just make it a little bit thicker because the water was spilling out there. We're going to turn off this so that we had see nothing else but the water. Here we could see, if we go back, there's some ice cubes in here that I have set up with the effectors on them. We're going to change this to, let's say, random, just so it's going to look a little bit more prettier. We have the inflow object here at the top. So here we could see I have the simulation already baked, so we're going to just play the animation and see how it looks. And as you can see, it is actual real geometry this time, and instead of the actual flow, and the water is actually coming up. So it's not going out through the glass, because I already have the animation and the simulation baked. So it's actually going to read, and if we click on this here, as you can see, I basically have the same setup. It's solidify at the top, and if you want to see the domain, we're going to go back here. This should be the domain. If we go into physics, no, it's actually this, and this is a mesh. So as you could see, I had it set with bubbles, and I had my settings on final so that I would just be both the mesh and the simulation at the same time, and that is how I was able to make this simulation for water, for this particular scene. So as you can see, it was bouncing, the actual water was actually bouncing off of the ice. As you could see, it's hitting on the ice, and then it's bouncing off of the rest of them, and it's actually coming up through the scene. You have a look to camera view, you're going to see it the same way. Bouncing, it's actually going to submerge all of those ice cubes at the top. So yeah, I hope this tutorial was helpful to you if you're making simulations for glasses in Mantaflow. Just make sure that you go over to your modifier settings and you apply a solidify on the actual glass or whatever it is that you're trying to keep the water in, and make it as thick as possible in the beginning so that the water could calculate inside the mesh that is you want to have it in. Otherwise, if it is too thin, the actual simulation is not going to know how to calculate this to be something else. So calculate it to something as big as this at first, and then you could actually scale it down afterwards, so that you could have a more realistic representation of a glass. So yeah, that's it for me. Let me know in the comments if you need any more clarification. I would try to see if I could do a little bit more simulations later on. The things that I learned from doing simulations, I would try to do some tutorials and show you what I've learned so far. So yeah, that's it for me.